Hold your fire! I'm a human!
What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my review of Lufia II Rise of the Sinistrals on the SNES. This is a game that I remember playing as a kid briefly on emulator, but I never really got very far. Same with the first Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, which by the way, if you want to check out my coverage of that, check out the pinned comment or description below. I played through that early last year. Recently-ish, Lufia II won a kind of a randomizer poll. It was suggested by friend and follower of the channel, Andrew. I actually started playing this on stream for a few hours, but ultimately life kind of got in the way, and I ended up kind of replaying it. I didn't get too far, obviously, offline, and I recently finished it as well as The Ancient Cave. And yeah, just wanted to give my thoughts on it. It's going to be a bit of a long one, so hopefully you guys are buckled in and enjoy the review. Lufia II Rise of the Sinistrals, also known as Lufia in Europe and Australia, is a turn-based role-playing game with puzzle elements. It was developed by Neverland and published by Taito in Japan, Natsume in North America, and Nintendo in PAL territories. It was released in Japan in 1995, North America in 1996, and PAL territories in 1997 respectively. So it was a bit of a later release, all things considered. And for my first playthrough, I played through the European version. Lufia II Rise of the Sinistrals is actually a prequel to the first game in the series, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. If you want to see my coverage on that game, check out the video overlay as well as the pinned comment description below. Full disclosure, playing the first game does spoil many elements of the second, but I feel that the first game is well worthy of a playthrough in of itself, so make your own decisions there. Lufia II touches on the origins of the Sinistrals, the main bad guys, and the battles that ensued. The game starts with a hero named Maxim, who is a trained swordsman from the town of Elcid. He's one of those guys who was born and bred to fight and has a beautiful set of locks, and locks that should be familiar to those that played the first Lufia game. Throughout the journey you meet up with a great cast of characters including Tia, Guy, Decker, Lexus Shia, Artea aka Artie, and Selen, all of which have varying abilities with the common goal of destroying the Sinistrals. The story is fairly easy to follow along with and features funny, witty, and at times mature dialogue and conversation. The dialogue can feel a bit chopped up and lost in translation in certain points, but overall I feel they did a great job, as well as conveying different character personalities through merely text in the way that it's written on the screen. There will be plenty of moments filled with strife and anger, joy and laughter, as well as moving moments and sadness. Graphics. Here's an interesting section to dive into. All in all, the graphics of Lufia II are pretty good, but I will say at times for such a late release I am a bit underwhelmed. The battle scenes, animations, late game spells, and so on, they look great. The sprites in the battles are also cool, whether they be quirky or downright just awesome. All in all, I don't really have a problem with the graphics, but I do feel like areas such as the towns and the overworld could be a bit better. Again, not that they're bad by any means, but I kind of figured that a game that came out in 1995 in Japan could just be a little bit more refined in a few areas. For example, Final Fantasy VI came out almost a year prior to Lufia II and looks way better. I know it was Squaresoft, you know, the giants, but still. All in all though, the graphics are certainly unique and charming. You know when looking at it that it's Lufia. It has that Lufia style, and it's certainly improved from the first game, so I guess you can't really complain too much. Music and sound. Alright, here we go. First off, the sound effects of Lufia II are pretty cool. Whether it be swiping the sword in the dungeons, blowing up the bombs, the in-battle sounds of the epic magic spells, they get the job done and convey their meaning well. But where Lufia II truly shines on this front is the music. Composer Yasunori Shiono returns to the fold and expands on an already good soundtrack from the first Lufia game in a big way. There are so many memorable tunes such as the battle theme, the boss themes, yes there are different ones, themes such as the overworld, towns, underwater areas, and dungeons that get you immersed, and man oh man the endgame soundtrack. When you're climbing those watchtowers, if you're not bobbing your head, are you even alive? And then boy oh boy, when I got to the floating island and I heard the quote final battle theme remixed from the beginning of the original Lufia, I popped off. One of the best SNES tracks returns, getting a remixed version, topping off this already grade A quality soundtrack. Controls. While this is an RPG, this section is still worth talking about. The overworld and towns are pretty standard and commonplace. However, in the dungeons, when you're trying to avoid enemies and use various tools, which of course I'll touch on later, you better hope the controls are intuitive, and thankfully, they are. It can take a little bit to get used to as far as navigating tiles in an effective manner, as well as utilizing the L and R buttons to turn a certain direction without actually moving. This helps play into puzzle solving and monster avoidance. But once you get the hang of everything, it becomes second nature very quickly. Also worthwhile to note that the menuing can be slightly clunky, but I did find it to be improved in the first game, and one of the cool things is that there's basically no lag on the menus. This means once you get it, so to speak, you could really fly through the menus. Gameplay and fun factor. This section, along with the final one, is what really sets Lufia II apart from the pack. Lufia II is a masterclass in gameplay and fun factor. Again, as much as I did enjoy the first Lufia, it is astounding the leaps that were made forward with the second. The core gameplay mechanics of Lufia II revolve around navigating through and around enemies in the various dungeons, which in the game are caves, towers, shrines, and mountains. The enemies have their own specific paths of movement, which move based on how you move. This makes for a very strategic element if you're trying to avoid the battles and not grind through for levels. The enemies, however, can be stunned by various tools as well, allowing you to walk around them freely for a time. These tools also play into the puzzle elements of said dungeons. You get access to tools such as an arrow that could flick switches from a distance, bombs which blast through walls, a grappling hook which could pull you over spaces on distant objects, a fire arrow which burns bushes, and a hammer that could both break weak walls but also push statues. Many times these tools play together, forcing you to mix and match throughout. And if you screw up your puzzles, don't worry, you have a reset tool. Or technically a spell, I guess, but it uses up 0 MP. Also, oftentimes throughout the dungeons you have secrets that can be found by finding hidden areas in walls or utilizing your tools. The dungeons differ greatly from the overworld in that on the overworld you do not use tools, you do not solve puzzles, and the battles are of the invisible random encounter variety. Touching a bit more on the puzzles are a staple and hallmark of Lufia II. They range from easy to downright brain-busting at times. However, I feel the overall balance of the puzzles is fair, especially for someone like me who doesn't intuitively get puzzles, so to speak, where a puzzle enthusiast might get them a lot quicker. I found a lot of the puzzles to be very rewarding to solve, very cheeky, and the ones that were too difficult, well, thankfully the strategy guide and the internet do exist, as I would then lead myself along with a hint to get it started, and if I truly couldn't get it, I'm looking at you, quote, the world's most difficult trick, end quote, puzzle, I just looked up a solution for that one. Wrapping back around to the enemy encounters, the battle system of Lufia II is pretty slick. Sure, it's your standard turn-based style, but with some interesting gimmicks. For example, the way you approach the enemy encounters in the dungeons matters a lot. Approaching most enemies from behind guarantees a got in first or preemptive strike. Occasionally, approaching from the side will also yield said results, while getting approached from behind by the enemy would do the inverse. Coupled with the preemptive strikes is an emphasis on agility. Being fast allows you to go first, ideal for magic users who could boost or heal when necessary, or getting off a nice wide range of magical damage attacks to get things started. You also have the ability to use items, defend, attack, and use IP attacks. IP attacks are an awesome staple of Lufia II that could help make many boss battles tilt in your favor. Certain weapons and armors have special attacks known as IP that are attached to them. And I also want to point out they're not just attacks, many of the IP abilities revolve around healing and buffing as well. A great battle tilting example of IP is the short-lived Decker Blade, which has an IP attack of reducing half of your enemy's HP. Yes, that even works on bosses. Half gone in one move. Your IP meter is a separate one from that of your HP and MP. How this fills is basically when you receive damage, your IP meter fills based on the percentage of your HP lost. So getting hit could actually be very useful at times. Lastly, before the battle begins, you could also choose to flee, again agility factors into this greatly, or swap your battle positions. Those in the front row deal more damage than those in the back, but I've also noticed that those on the outside formation seem to take less damage than those on the inside, and that could be adjusted outside of battle. Another awesome feature of Lufia II are the capsule monsters. You more or less have a minigame of Pokemon attached to this already beastly JRPG. There are 7 capsule monsters in total that you could find throughout the world, some of which are pretty hidden. Basically, the capsule monsters appear in battle with you and they do their own thing. Sometimes they attack, sometimes they use special attacks, sometimes they defend, and sometimes they flee. I find that their biggest uses for me are being a damage sponge, or doing the occasional crit or special attack to help out with the crew. Also, if your capsule monster dies in battle, fear not, they're not actually dead. They'll just return the next go around. Subsequently, you cannot heal your capsule monster in battle either, which kinda stinks. Now, the part that makes the capsule monsters really unique is the fact that they could level with experience, but they could also change forms when being fed certain items. They have a growth gauge, and when they are satisfied, they will then evolve into their next form, like the aforementioned Pokemon. And there's also a master form that when a certain form is fed a specific fruit, it will ascend to its personal greatness. Navigating through all this could be a bit clunky, so I do recommend using a guide, but I have a few quick tips for you. Despite what the capsule monsters are desiring on the screen, typically from class 1 to class 2 they like eating things like battle knives. From class 2 to 3, apple cider seems to do the trick. For 3 to 4, you can get away with war rapiers and shrieks. I found that more often than not they liked eating the war rapiers, and if they didn't, a shriek would kind of reset things. But if you prefer the old-fashioned way, at some point you do have access to an area called Forfeit Island, On that island will be a store where you could rebuy anything that you sold and or fed to your capsule monster already, likely being a nice store hub for capsule monster feeding goodness, which then leads me on to my next bit, the Markow Casino on Forfeit Island. This is a wonderful little sidetrack that could bring great joy, sometimes anger, but also replay value. Basically, the casino works as follows. You exchange your normal currency for coin, which can be used in the casino for card games and slot machines. Playing these gives you the chance to earn more coins. These coins can be turned in for various items, some of which are awesome, albeit incredibly expensive, like the Dragon Blade. Items that are a bit fun and gimmicky like the bunny set, or a really useful item called the Jewel Sonar, which I will touch on more in a bit. What's even cooler is that there is a special VIP section that you can access later on with a VIP card that grants you into the High Rollers area, where more coins are being risked and more coins can be won. I ended up grinding for a lot of the casino specific items by getting a solid base of coin inventory to start, then utilizing a trick that I made a short on revolving around leaving a literal weight on my controller and letting the slot machines just run for hours. It was pretty funny. That being said, the games themselves can be a lot of fun, and you can waste a lot of time here. Replay value. Speaking of the casino and its general replay value is a huge part of Lufia II and why it's so great. I wanted to touch on a few more things that really gets the completionist in me going. First up are the dragon eggs. On your normal run, there will be 8 dragon eggs in chests throughout the dungeons in specific spots. Once you grab them, later on when you have access to the ship, you could sail to an island with a small town attached to it, but most importantly, it'll be next to the dragon egg shrine. There, if you found 8 dragon eggs, the egg dragon will grant you one of 4 sweet prizes. After the prize is claimed, the eggs will be dispersed randomly back into opened chests from previous dungeons. That's where the aforementioned Jewel Sonar comes into play from the casino. If you enter a dungeon and use the Jewel Sonar, a sound cue will let you know if you missed an item. Most importantly, if you had already cleared the dungeon completely and the sonar goes off, that means that there's now a dragon egg there. The search for the dragon eggs, is a wonderful, albeit at times tedious, way to get replay value. Claiming more prizes from the egg dragon, and ultimately when all 4 sets of the 8 dragon eggs are found and turned in, the egg dragon will allow you to fight him for another prize. And the best part about the egg dragon is that it yields 60,000 experience and 60,000 gold upon defeat. Now be warned, the egg dragon is tough. I was able to beat him legitimately a few times, but you can also cheese him if you wish. That method can be found on my short that I recently made. So either way, have at it. There's also New Game Plus cycles to Lufia II. I know, right? Pretty cool. There's obviously the base game, which is a blast, and upon completing that you have access to the retry mode, which is the New Game Plus cycle. There you have the ability to earn 4 times the gold and 4 times the experience with your battles, making for an almost non-grindy, quicker road to the end of the game. Which if you beat again, then you unlock the gift mode, which sets up probably the coolest friggin' thing in the game, and it legitimately could be its own game and its own video, I'm not kidding. The Ancient Cave, a 99-floor, randomized, roguelike dungeon crawler. Now don't get me wrong, you could actually play the Ancient Cave in both the base and retry modes, and it does have its advantages to do so. But for me, the ultimate way to experience the Ancient Cave is through the gift mode. Basically, the gift mode is primarily just centered around the Ancient Cave. You start in the town of Gruberik, where you can then assemble your Ancient Cave diving team. Gift mode allows for any of 4 characters throughout Lufia II to be used, where that's not necessarily the case if you're playing through the regular game. You also have access to any capsule monster to aid you in your quest through the Ancient Cave. So, what's the deal with the Ancient Cave? Again, it could be its own video, so I'll do my best to sum it up as quickly as possible. As I already mentioned, it's a 99-floor randomized roguelike dungeon, meaning if you die, you lose everything you found, everything you've gained, including experience. However, around floor 21, you have the ability to find the item called Providence in a red chest, which allows you to escape the Ancient Cave. When you do that, you're able to keep any special blue chest items that you found, as well as iris items, or iris treasures. The blue chest items are items that can be brought back into the main game if you're playing on the non-gift mode. But for the purpose of gift mode, it's stuff that just doesn't disappear and can help make your next Ancient Cave dive much easier instead of starting with nothing. The iris items are found in normal red treasure chests, which normally feature items that cannot leave the Ancient Cave, but these ones are special, and they serve as trophies of sorts, giving you more incentive to continue Ancient Cave diving even after completing it to find the rest of them. And it kinda goes without saying, but yes, if you die or leave with Providence, you lose all your experience no matter what. When you go back in, you start at level 1. Another cool thing about the Ancient Cave is that there are enemies that don't even appear in the main game, and they are very powerful. A very cool thing to encounter, albeit dangerous. The final boss of the cave on floor 99 is quite frankly a meme, and the battle is incredibly gimmicky. I won't spoil it here, but I'll say that you better have some good equipment with some great IP attacks, and don't waste time. The Ancient Cave was incredibly addicting, and I could certainly see myself running through this thing multiple times a year just for the fun of it. I can't recommend it, and specifically gift mode, enough. Negatives. I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on at least a few negatives for Lufia II. At times, Lufia II could be very point A to point B. Things of course open up a bit when you get your ship, but oftentimes it's extremely linear, where I felt even early on in the first Lufia you had a bit more freedom. I specifically remember going through some treacherous areas at a low level to reach a further on town to get better gear. Along with this, back to Lufia II, about midway to 3/4-ish through the game, I felt a lot of the dungeons became a bit samey. Thankfully the gameplay and the puzzles helped keep things fresh enough to not be an annoyance, and the endgame did pick up in a big way. Lastly, I wanted to briefly touch on bugs and glitches. Lufia II is ripe with them. I'll leave a link in the pinned comment description detailing them further via the cutting room floor. I chose to play the European version for my playthrough because that one features a few bug and glitch fixes that the North American and Japanese versions were missing. And I will mention that my Ancient Cave experience was on emulator for gift mode, which was the North American version, and yes, I did experience the LNR equipment menuing text glitch, which is kind of annoying, as well as the floor 99 glitch in the Ancient Cave, and it is a bit meh and unpolished, but I felt like no matter the bugs, the game itself is just too damn good to be held back. Conclusion. Lufia II is a gigantic step above Lufia in the Fortress of Doom. Though most hardcore retro gamers and RPG fanatics know of Lufia II, I do feel that Lufia II doesn't get talked about as much by the casual retro game goer when it comes to the best JRPGs of all time. Specifically on the SNES, most people mention Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy IV, Secret of Mana, and so forth, and I mean rightfully so, all epic and legendary games in their own right. However, Lufia II has shocked me. I was truly not expecting to be sucked into the game as hard as I was. Not only did I beat the game, do almost every side questy and grindy thing for special items, the Ancient Cave clear, but I even grinded up to level 99 on the Egg Dragon. I could not get enough of this game. The base game speaks for itself. Quality story, dialogue, music, gameplay, etc. But where Lufia II separates itself is in its beautiful puzzle system, enemy encounter style in the dungeons, IP attacks while in battle, and the endless amount of replay value in side quests. As such, I give Lufia II on the SNES a 9.5 out of 10. This is not only an SNES JRPG juggernaut, this is an overall JRPG juggernaut. If the game didn't have so many glitches and the graphics were a bit better, I could probably overlook any other minor gripes that I have with the game, and I'd consider giving this game a 10 out of 10, and I mean that. Guys, if you haven't played Lufia II, please do so. And even if you don't feel like playing it, because it can be a little bit long, even consider just getting a save state for the gift mode and playing the Ancient Cave, I'm telling you right now. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. If you want more Lufia II content, check out the pinned comment description below as well as the end screen here to access my playthrough of the game, playthrough of the Ancient Cave, my unboxing, as well as my shorts. Take care.